Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our program. We're in Italy today, in the city of Pisa. And even if you don't know a lot about European history, Pisa, is that where the Tower of Pisa is? That crazy tower that tilts? Yes, we started talking about it yesterday, and we'll talk more about it today and finish.
没错，我们今天要继续介绍我们昨天介绍的比萨斜塔。那我们昨天简单的讲了一下这个比萨斜塔，当初呢是1173年的时候开始动工的。然后动工的时候，因为这个地基的关系，然后再加上说它本身那个地基土质比较松软嘛，然后他们在做的时候，地基又不够太浅了，它只有3公尺的这种深度，不够深，它要盖8层楼不行，所以的话就慢慢倾斜，然后中间的过程一路停工啦，碰到战事啦，花了199年，到了1372年才完成。那我们今天要继续介绍更多跟这个塔有关的相关资讯哦。
So today is day 2 of our 2-day program of the Leaning Tower of Pisa from mistake to miracle.
没错，就是我们提到抢救歪楼大作战，他这边提到 from mistake to miracle 都有使用这个 M 字头的 alliteration 这样子押头韵的写作技巧。
The Leaning Tower of Pisa. From mistake to miracle. Over the centuries, the tower continued to lean further and further to one side. By the year 1990, it was in serious danger of falling, so the tower was closed to the public. To keep the tower from falling, a large-scale restoration project took place. However, instead of making the tower completely straight, the focus was on keeping the tower stable while maintaining its famous tilt. Throughout the project, engineers tried several approaches. First, they placed heavy weights on one side to help shift the center of gravity. They also used steel cables, like those used for bridges, to hold the tower in place. Then they used a drill to remove soil from under the tower's higher end. Large concrete pillars were also placed under the tower to help support the foundation. It took almost a decade for this project to be completed. But it was the first time an attempt to straighten the tower had been effective. The tilt was corrected from 5.5 degrees to around 4 degrees, which brought the tower closer to its position 2 centuries ago. With this achievement, the tower was reopened in 2001 and is expected to stand proudly, even with a tilt, for many years to come.
Okay, let's get busy now. Part 1. Over the centuries, the tower continued to lean further and further to one side. We've already really discussed this. The problem is getting worse.
没错，所以在这里的话，经过数个世纪之久，对不对？Over the century， 随着这个世纪这样慢慢推移呢， the tower continued to lean further and further to one side. 好，这个 lean 这个字的话，我们之前提过，也可以把它代换成 tilt。T-I-L-T 就是倾斜的意思。比萨斜塔呢，持续向一边越来越斜，越来越斜，看它这样子，很快就要倒啦，这样。
By the year 1990, it was in serious danger of falling, so the tower was closed to the public. Before 1990, you could walk up, and the angle that you walked on was not straight up and down, and many people were afraid, gee, am I going to be the one who falls over with the tower? So you had to be a little bit brave to visit the Tower of Pisa before 1990.
没有错，在1990年代的时候呢，如果说在那个时间点你还敢去，然后看看这个比萨斜塔，我建议你是要到另外一边不会倒的那一边。要是刚好你在拍的时候，它要往你身上倒怎么办？对不对？好。所以这句话说 ，By the year 1990， 1990年的这个时候呢 ，it was in serious danger of falling。Be in danger of 的说法呢，意思就是有什么样的危险。好，它面临了严重的 serious 这个字，严重的倒塌的这个危机哦。So the tower was closed to the public， 它就开始不对外开放了。如果你今天说一个这个观光景点 is open to the public， 就是指对外开放。那相对于 open 就是用 closed to the public 来表达我不对外开放，我们要把它封起来，开始整修它了。
Also, this use here, closed to the public, means 24 hours a day until further notice. But sometimes, if you, say, want to visit a museum, it might have a sign, closed to the public on national holidays, or open to the public on Sundays, or something like that. So be careful when you're reading that.
没错，它实际的告诉你说，我们在国定假日的时候不对外开放，或是只有在某些日子的时候会开放。它要特别讲清楚，是特定标明说哪些时候你可以来看，或是不能来看。
To keep the tower from falling, a large-scale restoration project took place. Well, they didn't want it to tilt and fall over, of course, but how are you going to restore the building, put the building back to its normal degree of tilt, which would be 0 degree of tilt? To restore something is to bring it back to its original condition. So, but the Tower of Pisa was originally only 3 stories tall, if you remember from yesterday's program, before it, when it started to tilt. So this problem is, no wonder it took centuries and centuries to try to attempt to take care of this problem, and they had to use different methods and research to find out what is the best way to do this.
没错，所以老师刚刚介绍的这个最重要的核心字汇就是 restore。restore 好，就是 have something in their previous position or in their previous state or condition， 好，把它恢复到原本的状态。Maybe in the upright position， 可是当初它就已经歪掉了，我怎么样把它变到正的话，就不是原本的状态了。总之呢，你会看到这个字 restore， 在这里的话，我们看到了它的名词形态 restoration。restoration 就是 restore 这个字的这个名词形态。他说 to keep the tower from falling， 为了让这个塔呢不要倒下来 ，a large scale 这个字指的是规模。Large scale， 如果说把它放在一起，用一个 hyphen 连接起来，就是大规模的。好，一个大规模的 a large scale restoration， 好，大规模的修复的这种计划 project， 然后怎么样 took place 就发生了，就展开了。他们想尽办法要抢救这栋歪楼。
However, instead of making the tower completely straight, the focus was on keeping the tower stable while maintaining its famous tilt. If they made it straight, it would be just like any other building. Let's go over here. But the attraction of such a building is this unusual, 23 degree or whatever it was, tilt. That can be dangerous. So that's a kind of attraction for people.
23 degree would be awful. 它只有5度吧 ，5 degrees.
Any 2 degrees, I would feel.
好恐怖哦！好，所以在这里的话继续说啦。好 ，However, instead of making the tower completely straight， 好，说事实上，它不是要把这个塔呢变成完全直的，好，就是零角度的那种塔。然后他要想办法怎么样 ？The focus was on keeping the tower stable while maintaining its famous tilt。它呢还是要以歪楼的这种形式，这样大家还是会来看嘛。我会把它弄直的，比萨斜塔不斜了，那大家来看什么呢？对不对？所以它必须要保持它的稳定性，同时要保持它这种歪斜的特色，这是它今天在修复当中最重要的一项任务。
Okay, we'll take a break right here, come back and find out what the condition of the building is today. Okay, let's continue. Second paragraph. Throughout the project, the restoration project, engineers tried several approaches. This word is often used in building vocabulary. It just means ways or attempts, but they like the word approaches.
Approaches 这个字的话呢，就是指方法 methods、ways 的意思。那 approach 这个字，平常的时候你会看到靠近，比方你会说 the train is approaching， 好，比方说列车即将进站，对不对哈 ？approaching 这个字有机会指靠近的意思，但这边当名词使用的时候，它的意思呢就是方法。所以它整句话说 throughout the project， 在整个工程这个抢救的工程当中呢 ，engineers 工程师呢 tried several approaches， 他试过了好几种方法哦。
First, they placed heavy weights on one side to help shift the center of gravity. I think most people would try that first to see you want to untilt the building. So you kind of pull it back by weighting the side which is lighter, and that's how the building tilted away from the center line in the first place.
没错，所以他讲了第一种方法 ，they placed heavy weights， 好，放了很多重物 on one side to help shift the center of gravity。之所以会倾斜，它就是偏离了这中轴嘛。那如果说今天比较轻的那一边，就是距离中轴比较远的那一端就比较轻嘛，所以用放重物的方式，慢慢把它的重心调回来，不要继续往那个倾斜的方向倒。基本上这是它的第一种做法。
They also use steel cables like those used for bridges to hold the tower in place. Just think of, say, the Golden Gate Bridge. You can see those sloping cables. Now, they're made of metal, of course. They're not made of rope, in order to help keep the parts of the bridge stable. And that's what they tried here. Steel cables are these long, very strong lines, like they say, like those used for bridges, to hold the tower in place, to keep the tower from moving, to keep it from continuing to tilt.
没错，所以老师只举了那个金门大桥，是加州的这个金门大桥的 Golden Gate Bridge 的例子。你看到下面有很多很粗的那种钢缆，有没有？在这边提到的第二个例子，他说 They also used steel cables， 就是指那种很粗的那种钢缆 ，like those used for bridges， 好，就用来去固定桥梁那种钢缆呢。To hold the tower in place. If you hold something in place， 就是让它保持在原地，不要动，不要倒。好，就像玩那个叠叠乐的时候，一般不要让它倒啊，要想办法把它 hold 住。这个 hold the tower in place 就是它留在原地，不要倒下去。
Okay, then what? Then they used a drill to remove soil from under the tower's higher end. Well, if something is tilting, say, this way, this is the higher end, and if we remove soil from under there, maybe it will tilt back to straight.
没错，所以说今天的话，如果倒向某一边，那一定有一边的这个地基比较高嘛，对不对？那他就想到做法就是把地基比较高的那一面下面的土壤把它弄掉，让它的地基能够回来到比较水平的位置。所以你看到这个地方，他说 they used a drill 这个钻子，好，钻机，好 to remove soil from under the tower's higher end。高的那一面呢，它把它的一些的土从下面抽掉，让它有机会降下来。这样子的话，就可以把整个重心平衡回来了。这是他们想到的这些方式。
Large concrete pillars were also placed under the tower to help support the foundation. Well, a pillar is a column. C-O-L-U-M-N, C-O-L-U-M-N, a column like we see in many ancient buildings. These were concrete, so they're pretty strong. They're used for support. They were placed under the tower, and hopefully they hoped that it would stop the tilting.
没错，好，最后呢还说了 large concrete pillars， 老师刚刚提到另外 column 也是指那种很大的柱子。如果你有机会去到那种神庙，他们那种柱子都好粗啊，那个叫做 column， 也可以叫做 pillars。好，这个 large concrete pillars 就是大型那种混凝土做的那种柱子呢 were also placed under the tower， 然后呢，它就是放在那个整个塔的下面 ，to help support the foundation， 去帮助地基去稳固它，不要让它随便往任何一个方向倒。
我很紧张。Is it going to work? I don't know. Let's take a break and then we'll find out.
没错。
Okay, this is our final paragraph, not only for today, but for this 2-day lesson. 结果 we're going to find out what happened. It took almost a decade for this project to be completed, but it was the first time an attempt to straighten the tower had been effective. Yay! So a decade, of course, is 10 years. From our description yesterday, you might have thought, maybe it took a year. But they were very careful. If they made a mistake, the tower could absolutely fall over and then, it would be a useless project. But step by step, they tried certain ways, and finally they did straighten the tower, or they found a way to effectively help the tower to be more perpendicular, to be 90 degrees above. Actually, they didn't quite get it to 90, but they did make it safe.
没错。所以这里的话，你看到了，最后成功了，耶！但是花多久时间呢？It took almost a decade. 好 ，decade 就是 10 years， 10年的意思。For this project to be completed， 好，它到真正完工的时候，中间大概花了约10年的时间。它是1990年发现问题的嘛，它一路这样子弄。好了，他告诉你说 ，But it was the first time an attempt to straighten the tower had been effective。意思就是指说，不过呢，虽然花了10年，可是之前他们这些工人啊，在当初在建到第3层慢慢往上盖的时候，其实都想过方法了，都失败了嘛，所以到现在我们才要收这个烂摊嘛，对不对？所以但是至少这10年里面是成功的，好有效的去做到这个目标。这边有一个重要字汇叫 effective 就是有效的，好，它是第一次能够有效的让这个塔稍微直回来，不要往一个方向倾斜的特别厉害，这是第一次成功了。
For effective, we can use 口语的话 we can say it worked. It was successful.
没错。
All right, let's continue. The tilt was corrected from 5.5 degrees, as he said, to around 4 degrees. Doesn't sound like a lot to me, which brought the tower closer to its position 2 centuries ago. So we will see if this, I'm not going to live another 200 years, but with any luck, they'll be successful, and maybe a century or 2 or 3 centuries from now, they will have some new method. And I don't think they'll ever want to straighten the tower.
No, they will keep the tilt. That's the that's the point, right?
That's the attraction of this. And it's a beautiful building. It's all carved. Stone is carved on the... It's not like modern skyscrapers that are absolutely flat, and they're tall, but they're not especially attractive.
没错，所以在这里还告诉你说 the tilt 啊，这个倾斜的角度呢 was corrected 修正了 from 5.5 degrees 从 5.5 度呢修正到怎么样 to around 4 degrees 差不多修正回来1.5度变成4度 which 好怎么样 brought the tower closer to its position 2 centuries ago 所以你可以想象一下这200年间我们往现在推算回200年的时间好，200年前的时候，它的这个倒的程度大概是4度，然后到现在过了200年之后变成5.5度。那我们这次的这个努力，10年的努力，让它回到200年前只有4度倾斜的状态，也算是很了不起了哦。
With this achievement, here that means success. With this success, the tower was reopened in 2001, the year 2001. And is expected to stand proudly, even with a tilt, for many years to come. We hope so, because it's a charming building, and in terms of scientific discovery, Galileo, who was an Italian, and he was one of the greatest scientists ever, he conducted an experiment by climbing to the top of the tower. And you can look that up and read it for yourself. In terms of science, it was one of the most important scientific experiments ever.
没错。所以如果说各位对这个有兴趣的话，你有机会去看一下伽利略，非常有名的这个科学家，曾经在这个塔上面做了一个重力，跟重力有关的实验，细节你自己去查，我们不要破梗。我们来看一下最后这句话，他说了 ，With this achievement， 在这样的成就，取得了这样的成就之后呢 ，the tower was reopened in year of 2001， 2001年的时候，它重新在这个开张了。所以你看，1990年发现问题嘛。然后中间呢讨论花了大概快10年的时间搞定了之后，确定一切就绪。2001年开放，差不多就是10年的时间。And is expected to stand proudly。好 ，When you say is expected to do something， 就是大家会期望怎么样？这个比萨斜塔能够怎么样继续屹立不摇啊？好 ，stand proudly，even with the 即便有点倾斜 ，for many years to come。For many years to come， 就是在未来能够继续的屹立不摇，只是这样子弯弯的，但是没有倒下去，这样子持续好多年。
Okay, there's a bit of history for you and architecture. Building of these ancient buildings. I'm still amazed by the pyramids. It doesn't look like much. You think, a child could just put blocks together and make one of these things, but it wasn't that simple at all. I couldn't be an architect myself, but I appreciate the science and art of architecture.
就是这个建筑风格 architecture。老师刚刚提到金字塔，他们以前在那个埃及的时候就会去研究说，到底要建什么样的角度可以建到最大，但是上面的重量又不会压垮整个金字塔。然后最后发现好像是50几度的时候是最大，能够建出底座最大的金字塔，又不会压垮的这种黄金比例。所以说其实非常非常酷，有机会多知道一些这种斗知识，挺有趣的哦。
Okay, meet you in Egypt. Until the next time.
Bye bye.